Hello and welcome back. Okay, so a lot of you, especially if you follow me on other social media, have asked me about my crazy annotated, colored on the edges, colored on the inside edition of Percy Jackson, and just how I annotated it and how I got started annotating it and how I decided what to annotate and just all of what I annotate with, all of these questions. And I decided I would just answer them all in one video. So I'm going to take you to my table, I'm going to flip through the book, I'm going to show you the tools I use, I'm going to show you my thought process, and we'll just go through the whole thing. And then after we do that, if you have questions or if you aren't sure about something that I talked about, or if you want suggestions for your own annotating adventures, go ahead and ask me in the comments. But let's go take a look. All right, so let's get started. So first and foremost, I want to talk a little bit about the things that I used. So I did use a whole ton of highlighters, different colors of highlighters for different things, different characters. I'll kind of show you that in a second. But the brand I ended up using were the mild liners. Now the number one question I get asked about these is, do they bleed? So the answer is no, but also yes. So let me explain what I mean by that. So each of these has two sides. It has like a highlighter side, and then it has kind of like almost like a marker Sharpie side. If you're just highlighting in the book, like highlighting passages, it doesn't bleed. And I'll show you what I mean by this in a second. But a lot of times I was drawing and coloring in the book. I kind of use both sides for that. And when you start doing that and you start creating like layers of color, then they bleed a little bit. So it kind of depends on what you're doing, but I'll kind of show you what that looks like in a second. I also used pens as well. And the pens that I used are the Paper Age. There was nothing really special about these, so I don't know if I would recommend these. I mean, they worked fine, but really any gel pen should work fine for you. I did like these glided really well. Some of the colors were a little too light to show up on the page. Like I think a lot of these are a little too light to show up on the page. So you might not need all the colors. Like I got a case that had all the colors, but I mostly, when I was writing, used like black, blue, and a couple darker colors. So just keep that in mind. You might not need the big case of them. So let's take a little look in the book. So on my first page, I have all of my highlighting colors and what each of them represents. So as you can see from this, I did a lot of highlighting colors that represented different characters. I had a color that represented like weapons. I had a color that represented dreams and prophecies. You'll see a lot of yellow for Zeus and lightning imagery. I also used just like a regular highlighter color, like that neon yellow, for like miscellaneous Greek myth. So anytime they were recounting like a Greek myth or talking about the original myth, I would use a highlighter to mark that in the book. I will also mention this was actually the last thing that I did, this front page with all of the highlighters, colors for which characters and what they meant, kind of because I was figuring it out as I went, right? So as I was going, I was sort of like picking out colors for things. So I ended up doing this last. I don't know if I'd recommend that. I think as you're going, if you want to like slowly add things in, it's easier to keep track of, because there were times when I was annotating where I had to like go back to double check that I was doing the right thing, because I would be like, wait, what color am I using for this? I'm just gonna quickly address this because I feel like people might ask. This is not bleed from this. So when I first started doing this, I was actually using like tabs. So I'll show you the tabs I used in a second as well. But I was using those tabs and I was writing on them to represent what they meant, because I wasn't sure I was going to use this many highlighters. I thought I was going to do more tab coloring. And in the end, I ended up using more highlighters. And you'll see some tabs in there as well, but I really focused more on highlighting. So I wrote on the tabs and then closed this, and the ink came off of the tabs because they're like a waxy paper onto this. So this is not going to bleed here. It's just because I did it on the tabs. Since we're talking about tabs, these are the ones I've been using, the color note. These are from Amazon. So there are definitely other options out there on Etsy and things like that. When I bought these, it was my first time ever using tabs. So I wanted to just get like the cheapest option available and see if I liked it, see if I enjoyed it before I invested in like better tabs. These work fine. I think they're great. You get like packs of 10 with like various color schemes in them, which is really cool. Like it's kind of a hot mess, sorry. But that's nice because then you can like experiment with color and like which ones you like. And I like to use certain colors. Like if I have a book that maybe matches a color scheme, I'll use that color scheme of tabs to do the book as well. So I was going to leave this page till the end, but I figure we'll just jump in. So one thing that I did with this, and I also did it with book 2, and I'll continue doing it, is the cover page has one picture, like one little doodle of something relevant from every single chapter in the book. So every little doodle you see is from a specific chapter. The lightning I actually drew in at the end to kind of bring it all together. And I did something similar in book 2, and I'm going to be continuing to do that as well. But like we have the Minotaur that's in like Fruit of the Loom underwear. We have like the flags for when they were doing Capture the Flag, helmet, some nachos with bean dip, Half-Blood Hill, we have the tree, you know, we have the poodle. So it's really fun to look through this because I can literally like point out each thing and like what chapter it's from, which is really cool. I like that I did this. And book 2, of course, the cover page has a thing from every chapter, but it looks completely different because it's fully represented by the chapter. So I draw these as soon as I finish the chapter. So once I finish every chapter, I'm going to show you in a second, I write some notes about the chapter, and then I immediately draw a picture of something that reminds me of that chapter so that I don't forget. So one thing I love about this copy especially is that as you flip through, my drawing and like the risks I was willing to take and what I wanted to put on the page gets like more and more elaborate as the book goes on. So early on in the book, I was mostly just like highlighting and like writing little notes. And then eventually like I start drawing, and then it just gets like crazier and crazier. So I've changed up how I'm using tabs for book 2, but essentially I was using tabs in this to really, so the highlight is just to highlight little things that I like. So little quotes that I like, or little moments I think are important or foreshadowing for each character. Like I said, there were some other things I highlighted like dreams or myths. But if it was especially important, a lot of times I would add a tab when I was doing this the first time around. And then I might even write some notes as well. I really tried to capture the first mention or description of each character. And see, this is a great example. This is talking about Zeus and Kronos and the myth of that. So that's highlighted in that neon yellow. I also did a lot of tracking of like dyslexia and ADHD. I just thought that was really interesting to follow for his character, especially since I have both of those things. So it was really fun to be able to follow that through the book. I mean, you can even see, I literally wrote me too. One thing I wanted to do was I wanted to track lightning in the book. I mean, it's called the Lightning Thief, right? So as we go on, you're going to see that every time lightning was mentioned, I would start to draw lightning. And these are like little lightnings. By the end of the book, the lightning gets wild. So this was when I started like doodling. So literally just started with some socks. This was the scariest ladies were knitting socks. But eventually the doodles got more elaborate, right? So we have like the scissors and the string of fate. And this is like what I'm talking about with notes. So I sort of made it a thing to do like mainly 3 notes at the end of each chapter. And it really is just like thoughts or like questions that I had after the chapter. Some water. I also started doing when there was a dream sequence, I would kind of highlight it with like a nighttime symbol, like some symbology of like nighttime. And you'll see again, lightning starts to get like more wild across the page. Okay, this is a great example. So there's like a thunderstorm going on these pages, and you could see like I started really getting into lightning. Like I started really enjoying drawing lightning, and I just like drew it all over the place. Like as long as it was thunderstorming, I was gonna draw lightning. We've got Percy's mom's blue chocolate chip cookies. So a lot of people are gonna ask like, how did you decide what to highlight? And really for me, it just was anything that stood out. I wanted to follow, you know, things like sea and ocean. I wanted to follow things like ADHD and dyslexia. I wanted to really note fun quotes from characters or moments that I thought might maybe matter later or might be foreshadowing or just anything. And it definitely got to a point where I wanted some color on every page. So I would like specifically look for moments that I thought were really fun to highlight or moments that really stood out to me. I highlighted Annabeth with purple. So this is really fun because this is kind of where we get to start see her color. And I think that's something exciting too. Like as you flip through, you can really see where characters kind of show up. Red I used for monsters. So if you just flip through, you can see where they're being attacked by a monster because I'm using that red color, right? So it really like stands out. And I think that's really fun too, because you can almost see the story play out across the pages with the colors that I used. Okay, here's where I started to get really more creative. So we have some water on the different pages. And then I got into like lava, rocks falling. And this is really what I mean by I got more creative as I went. Like I felt just looking through this book now as I make this video, you can see how I get like more bold and I take more risks. And I'm like, yeah, I could draw that. Yeah, I could try drawing a spear, right? Like I've never drawn a spear in my life, but let's try it. Let's see what that looks like. I mean, here I drew like a dolphin and I drew these like apothecary jars full of just like random stuff. And this was really fun too, because when I drew these, I think if I recall, I was like on a live stream and I was like asking for recommendations of what to draw. So this was like very specific to that moment when I was reading this on live stream as well. I mean, how cool. So this was really fun because there's a lot of travel in this book. So when they're on this bus, I literally was like trying to, there's like old maps in like cartoons where they show like the travel. So there's literally the bus and kind of the route it's taking. And that continues, right? So you can see the bus continue its trek across all the pages where they're on this bus. One thing I think a lot of people might bring up is they're going to say, well, I'm not a good enough artist to do this. So what I want to mention is one thing that I did throughout the course of this book was if I wanted to draw something like a dolphin, I literally had my computer open it and I would just Google like easy dolphin drawing. And I would see like how people drew like a really simple dolphin and I would kind of try to emulate that. So there's a lot of things in here that are sort of like something I Googled and then I'd kind of try to draw it my own and like make it my own. Which also made it fun too, because I was experimenting with drawing. So like, I've never drawn a little mini bus before, but I got to do it for this because I was like, I'm gonna take a risk and try drawing something to remind me of this page. And then like the bus gets destroyed by lightning. We have some like little animal statues. I think the most important thing about how I was drawing too is like sometimes things are gonna look kind of wonky, right? Like see, these are like the snakes. They don't look that great, but it's all about like experimenting and trying new things and, you know, taking some risks and just playing around with doodling. It doesn't have to be perfect. You're drawing these for you, for your copy of the book. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's just as long as you're having fun, you're doing it right. I love this like little nighttime moment. It's so cute. So eventually they got on a train, and here you can see like the train. I think this is really fun. This is like an underwater moment. So we have like some fish, some bubbles. There was mention of like lots of pollution in the water, so I tried to draw that as well. I also really like this. This is when they got involved in a trap with like Cupid arrows, and so I tried to like draw them flying all over the page. Like you can literally tell, like just flipping through this book, you can see when they get to Las Vegas because I made a note to like, you know, draw a little picture of it. And going through this, it almost feels like a scrapbook of their travel because you can like see all these little pictures. So without even having to read the words on the page, you can kind of get a feel for where they were or what they were doing. Okay, so this is really cool. So they like drove into this desert, and I was just going to draw a little bit of the desert, but then I just kept drawing and it turned into this really cool like full page design. Same with this. So this is like an underwater thing. So we have like a shark, we have like a seahorse, some bubbles, and you know, it's something that I started with just one image and then just kind of kept going until it was like a whole page. We've got some drachma falling around this page. I think it's just really cool to see how I went from like one little drawing of some socks to like full page designs. Like here we have, they're going into the underworld. So you have like this whole scene of them like, you know, going there. And then like I really started experimenting later in the book with things that like really incorporated the whole page and even like bled into the actual words. So this tree, you know, you can see like the branches actually like going into any space that is available to sort of like bring all the words together. Same with this. I just really wanted you to get a feel for the scene just by looking at the page. I love this page. So you have the fire at the top and then you have the water at the bottom. I believe this is the battle between Percy and Ares. And so I just really like that. I like that you just know that something is being celebrated here because you turn to the page and see all these fireworks. So once I finished the book, I wanted to paint the edges. I'd never painted edges before. This is not watercolor. I am not a professional, but you know, I wanted to try it. I used, these are alcohol-based markers. Somebody actually sent me this on, from TikTok, but I will say I looked these up. This is like a very affordable set of alcohol markers, and it comes with like a ton of them and a ton of different colors. And all of them do have two sides. So they have a side that's almost like a little like Sharpie pen, and then they also have a side that's like, you know, more like a paintbrush. Now, if you have a clamp, I would suggest the best way to do this is to like clamp it because your pen will slide between the pages. So you want this as tight as possible. I don't have a clamp, so I basically like sat this flat on, I think my table, like on the very edge of the table, and I put like a 15-pound weight on top of it. Oh no, I'm sorry. I put like a flat thing on top so it was like evenly distributed, and then I put a weight on top of that. And then if I really was having trouble like getting the small lines, I would even like lean on it. Like I'd put my weight onto it to like be able to draw out the design. I drew the design first with pencil, and then I went back through with the pens and markers to add the color. And it did take, I mean, it took a good like solid 2 or 3 hours. Like it was definitely a process for sure. I really wanted to capture the things in the book. So we have the water, which goes into the Empire State Building, which we see towards the end of the book, and then into some clouds and lightning up at the top of the book. And yeah, that is my copy of Percy Jackson the Lightning Thief. I think it's just so fun to flip through. It's definitely my like favorite. Like when people ask me like, what is my most like treasured copy of a book, I'll probably tell them this, because this is not only a book to me anymore. This is like a whole experience and almost like a whole piece of art that I created that I just think came out really cool. And it's something that anybody can do because I went into it with no experience whatsoever and just, you know, learned as I went and had fun and experimented and, you know, took chances drawing things that I didn't think I knew how to draw, but basically said like, I'm going to try it. And what's the worst that can happen? I mess it up a little bit and I just move on to the next page, right? And try again and try something different. And if ever I drew something, so like on the front page, you can see there's a couple examples of this. If I ever drew something that I was like really scared to draw, like, okay, great example, the helmet. I was like really nervous about drawing this because it's a little more detailed. Just draw it with pencil first, like a really light pencil, so that you're not worried about like, you know, messing up. And then you can go back over it with pen, right? And that's a really fun way to like be able to experiment without that permanent part of it. And that way you aren't going to worry about that one little slip up because you can kind of figure out what you want first and then go back in with the pen in order to make it permanent and then color it in. By the time you color it in, I mean, you can't even tell that I originally drew that with pencil, and that's pretty awesome. And yeah, that was my annotation process for Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief. I hope this was helpful. I've had a lot of questions about this, and I know I've made some TikToks and Reels about it, but those go by so fast that it's hard to answer all the things, so hopefully this was a little bit more in-depth. I have already finished book 2. I annotated it, I colored it, all that fun stuff, I drew in it. I haven't colored the edges yet, though, so I'm gonna be doing that probably next week, and then after that, I will be starting book 3, which is really exciting, and I'll be doing the same thing for the whole series. After I get done with the first 5 books, if I'm still really enjoying doing that, I'm going to probably continue it into the further, like, extended Percy Jackson world, into all the other books, but one step at a time, we'll get there. Like I said at the beginning, feel free to let me know any of your questions about annotating or about this project or about things that I did here, and I'll try to clarify or answer as best I can. I think it's really important to know that I'm not like a professional annotator. This is something I saw some people do some videos on, and I picked it up and just kind of made it my own. There's no hard and fast rules. There's no, you're annotating the right way or you're annotating the wrong way. It's really just to have fun and create a deeper relationship with the text. So any way that you annotate is probably the right way, to be honest. So don't feel so stressed about it. Don't feel so worried about it. If you're scared to do all of this in a book, you know, get a cheap version or get a second copy of a book you already have. I mean, this book costs $9, right? Like, I have journals that are meant to be written in that cost double that or more. So I think it's, you know, if you want to try this, but you're scared about writing in the book, just get, you know, a really cheap paperback version of a book you love or of a book you haven't even read yet. And just go for it. This stigma that we can't do something like this in books is so silly. I mean, maybe in like an old book that's like a collector's item, I don't know, but like in a $9 paperback that they've made billions and billions of copies of, I think it's fine, right? And it's a fun art project. And now this copy of this book is so much more special to me than you know, any other $9 copy of this book ever will be. So I think it's really just, it's really fun and it's really relaxing, and you don't have to be an artist to do it. You know, you just make your little sketches. It's for you. It's not for, you know, unless you're giving this to somebody as a gift, you're making this for you. It's about you doing something relaxing and fun, and it's kind of like reading and an art project mixed together. So again, there's no wrong way to do it. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell. I'd love to see you back here some other time for book videos, board game videos, other Lego. Gosh, what else am I making videos about these days? Who even knows? Just, I hope to see you back sometime. Have an amazing day, and as always, happy reading.